When you have an isolated atom, each electron in that atom occupies a discrete energy level. You can think of these energy levels like individual seats from a hockey stadium. And all atoms of the same element, when they are far apart from each other, have identical available energy levels. But when you bring multiple atoms together to form a solid, something interesting happens. The outermost electrons now feel the pull not only of their own nucleus, but of all the other nuclei as well. And as a result, their energy levels shift. So instead of being identical, they become a series of closely spaced but separate energy levels, an energy band. The highest energy band with electrons in it is known as the valence band. And the next higher energy band is called the conduction band. You can think of it like the balcony level. In conductors, the valence band is only partially filled. This means with a little bit of thermal energy, electrons can jump into nearby unfilled seats. And if an electric field is applied, they can jump from one unfilled seat to the next and conduct current through the material. In insulators, the valence band is full, and the difference in energy between the valence and conduction bands, the band gap, is large. So when an electric field is applied, no electrons can move. There are no available seats to move into in the valence band, and the band gap is too big for any electrons to jump into the conduction band. Which brings us to semiconductors. Semiconductors are similar to insulators, except the band gap is much smaller. This means at room temperature, a few electrons will have sufficient energy to jump into the conduction band, and now they can easily access nearby empty seats and conduct current. Not only that, the empty seats they left behind in the valence band can also move. Well, really, it's the nearby electrons jumping into those empty seats, but if you look from afar, it's as though the empty seat or hole is moving, like a positive charge, in the opposite direction to the electrons in the conduction band. By themselves, pure semiconductors are not that useful. To make them way more functional, you have to add impurity atoms into the lattice. This is known as doping. For example, in silicon, you can add a small number of phosphorus atoms. Phosphorus is similar to silicon, so it easily fits into the lattice, but it brings with it one extra valence electron. This electron exists in a donor level just beneath the conduction band. So with a bit of thermal energy, all these electrons can jump into the conduction band and conduct current. Since most of the charges that can move in this type of semiconductor are electrons, which are negative, this sort of semiconductor is called N-type, N for negative. But I should point out that the semiconductor itself is still neutral. It's just that most of the mobile charge carriers are negative. They are electrons. So there is also another type of semiconductor where most of the mobile charge carriers are positive, and it's called P-type. To make P-type silicon, you add a small number of atoms of, say, boron. Boron fits into the lattice but brings with it one fewer valence electron than silicon, so it creates an empty acceptor level just above the valence band. And with a bit of thermal energy, electrons can jump out of the valence band, leaving behind holes. It is these positive holes which are mostly responsible for carrying current in the P-type semiconductor. Again, the material overall is uncharged, it's just that most of the mobile charge carriers are positive holes. Where things get interesting is when you put a piece of P-type and N-type together. Without even connecting this to a circuit, some electrons will diffuse from N to P and fall into the holes in the P-type. This makes the P-type a little negatively charged and the N-type a little positively charged. So there is now an electric field inside an inert piece of material. Electrons keep diffusing until the electric field becomes so large it prevents them from crossing over. And now we have established the depletion region, an area depleted of mobile charge carriers. There are no electrons in the conduction band and no holes in the valence band. If you connect a battery the wrong way to this diode, it simply expands the depletion region until its electric field perfectly opposes that of the battery, and no current flows. But if you flip the polarity of the battery, then the depletion region shrinks, the electric field decreases, and electrons can flow from N to P. When an electron falls from the conduction band into a hole in the valence band, that band gap energy can be emitted as a photon. The energy change of the electron is emitted as light, and this is how a light-emitting diode works. The size of the band gap determines the color of the light emitted. In pure silicon, the band gap is only 1.1 electron volts, so the photon released isn't visible. Its infrared to increase the efficiency of LEDs was to create a well, a thin layer of material at the p-n junction called an active layer, that shrinks the band gap just a bit. This encourages more electrons to fall from the n-type conduction band into holes in the p-type valence band. The best active layer for gallium nitride was already known to be indium gallium nitride, which would not only make the band gap easier to cross, but also narrow it just the right amount to bring its blue-violet gap down to true blue. This time, Akazaki and Amano surprise, the technique worked, giving him a clean indium gallium nitride crystal. He quickly incorporated this active layer into his LED, but the well worked a little too well and overflowed with electrons, leaking them back into the gallium nitride layers. Unfazed, within a few months, Nakamura had fixed this too, by creating the opposite of a well, a hill. He returned to his reactor one more time to make aluminum gallium nitride, a compound with a larger band gap that could block electrons from escaping the well once inside. The structure of the blue LED had become far more complex than anyone could have imagined. But it was complete. By 1992, Shuji Nakamura had this.
And I showed the chairman, I told him, please, hey, chairman, come to my office. I showed the blue LED and he said, oh, this is great, and became so happy. At my office, yeah.
After 30 years of searching by countless scientists, Nakamura had done it. He had created a glorious bright blue LED that could even be seen in daylight. It had a light output power of 1,500 microwatts and emitted a perfect blue at exactly 450 nanometers. It was over 100 times brighter than the previous pseudo-blue LEDs on the market. Nakamura wrote, "I felt like I had reached the top of Mount Fuji." Nishia called a press conference in Tokyo to announce the world's first true blue LED. The electronics industry was stunned. A researcher from Toshiba remarked, "Everyone was caught with their pants down." The effect on Nishia's fortunes was immediate and explosive. Orders flooded in, and by the end of 1994, they were manufacturing 1 million blue LEDs